that perspective or that tone that shapes market forces absolutely solidifies future demand. I love it. That means we're going to have higher occupancy and higher rates over the next 3 years, which we said 2024 adjustment, 2025 things are going to be good, 26 and 7 are going to be gangbusters.
I mean, I won't spill the beans, man, but I'm really excited about what we're seeing so far and really excited to dive into this.
It's great to see the basics working and everything planning and our business model being executed at a massive scale like this, which is absolutely amazing. Welcome everybody to Self-Storage Income, and we have got the numbers, the reports, the stats, where our portfolio is at today, how that has changed over the busy season, and that takes us and gives us a broader look at the industry, demand, and occupancy. I'm really excited to go through this. It's a good insight to this year, what's changing up, what we've seen, and we're going to draw some parallels here. So I'm really excited to dive into this. We got 3 months worth of data here. So it's, last year was rough.
Yeah, it was for a lot of people.
Yeah,
for sure.
Rough year. It was, demand was down a lot. We had rents dropped across the board, occupancy, and so we had a lot of people that were just not obviously pleased. We don't like it when things go down. And the thing that defined last year, I think, was the busy season, where it just didn't come. It was like, you know what I mean? It was like
very lackluster. I mean, there was, normally you see a very prominent spike, especially when you're looking at the data, you're looking at the graphs, all those, you see that clear spike in the busy season every time. Starting April, May, that time frame starts to really heat up. And like you're saying, last year, housing market was not moving at all. We've got 40% of our business that comes from that.
Yep.
So there was not a ton of movement there. And I think too, all of that all those macroeconomic factors were so new to the market that a lot of people at that point in time were saying, hey, I'm gonna hang out. I'm not gonna move. Interest rates might come back down. I don't know where they're going to be at. So we'll stay here for a little bit longer, whether it was a house or apartment or any of that kind of stuff. Whereas this year, I'm speculating that people have really come to terms with where things are at currently. And the fact is that, we can't just wait forever, right?
Yep.
Like if we have to move, we have to move. Interest rates are what they are. There's a lot of things that developers and banks are doing to be able to, whether that's buy interest rates down or get in at lower interest rates at whatever point in time. So there's a lot of incentives for people now, and I think the market's created a lot of incentives for people to go ahead and move. And I won't spill the beans, man, but I'm really excited about what we're seeing so far and really excited to dive into this because for a lack of a better term, 2023 was a pretty heavy kick in the nuts.
Yeah, it was.
For a lot of people.
Yeah.
And seeing, like you said, with those decreased street rates, decreased occupancies, the double whammy of that alone,
yes.
It was really tough to see facilities where they were at, a year ago.
Yeah.
So a lot of problem solving, a lot of things. But again, a lot of this is getting back to the basics, right?
Yep.
Of all these things that we've been talking about, of customer service, of great products and service for tenants, for customers coming in, training employees, doing the fundamentals really, really well every day.
Yep.
That is literally the key.
Yeah.
Answer the phone, get people moved in. That's it.
Yeah.
Simple.
It's funny because when I wrote and talked a lot about this, 2 years ago, no, more than that, almost. We're talking.
Dude, 2 years.
Dude, it was more than 2 years ago. It was
Yeah.
3 years now since when I started talking about this. It's just wild. That just blows my mind. But I talked a lot about 24 was going to be the year of transition, right? And I think that's held up, even from back in 21, where it was in 22, where we looked at it and said, I was like, 22, 23 are going to be rough. And fall of 22 and 23 busy season sucked. Mm-hmm. And the reason, and I think why that's held up, because the idea behind it was inflation, interest rates would have to rise, and 23 was going to be the adjustment year in the economy. And that means that 24, we would see the reaction of the customers, meaning that 23, the economic factors that moved the market, changed everything. 24 was the adaptation. So 23 shocked everybody. It was like, I don't know what to do, right? Where 24, it's the acceptance of the new reality we're all living in. Mm-hmm. And now we need to move again. Like things gotta change. We got to do something here, because the idea that it's going to go back to normal, that idea of going back to normal is gone.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody believes that. Thank goodness. And that setting in where it's like, okay, how do we operate in this new landscape? Now let's get operating. Mm-hmm. And so that end of 22, fall of 22, when interest rates really started to rise, 23 just messed everybody up. And it was this readjustment period of time. And then 24, it's like, all right, where do we go from here? But that's the point. Where do we go? People need to start doing something. We got to adjust. We got to move. We got to transition in this new normal. And I think that showed up a lot. I think there was another part of it, though, too. The operators themselves, including us. What do we do in this new normal? Because when you look at how you operate in a time that we saw before, operators, they didn't do anything. And they got 100% occupancy and they could raise rates at 15% a year. They didn't do anything to get it.
And
right?
values across the board were just insane.
Just exploding. That meant, though, that nobody could really see underlying problems in the industry overall. When everything is rented out, people are choosing to rent things that they don't even want because they just don't have availability for anything else. Well, that really screws up when you don't even know where demand really is because it's overinflated. So when that settled down, all of a sudden you started to actually see where were markets overbuilt, where were they not, what unit types were over. Did this market even want, it just started settling down. And so then you had to adjust to it, operate, and then you got to say, now who are the new consumers? Because it was all these people moving and trading houses and everything else, and the COVID effect. So now you have a new target. It was a whole year of transition in business for us, everybody else, for their operations, and how do we operate in this new landscape? What works, what doesn't, the old cycle doesn't. And there was a lot of coming out of that. And I think that this year, as we've really started to come out and fine tune, which we'll go through the numbers here, but I think, we're going, okay, we've hit our stride. We really hit it. And it started out when we're looking at, March. March was still pretty cold. Mm-hmm. March, in most of our markets, we are Northwest, Southwest, Midwest types, right? Nevada, Oklahoma, Missouri, the Northwest. So, we are, all markets are seasonal. Lots of those markets, though, are very seasonal. And so, coming into March, it was still pretty cold. We were still looking at things saying, we were positive, but, we were talking net positive across our portfolio, 62 units rented out of over 10,000 units. So
in like a month's time frame. So you're saying like a net positive move-in of only like 60 people.
Yeah.
And we have facilities that drastically needed to be filled up with pretty sizable vacancies.
Good point. We had units to fill.
Yeah.
So
well, and some, like you're talking about it, from 2023, I think we were still feeling some of that lag effect from the decreased occupancies and decreased rates and all of that.
So the whole portfolio.
Exactly.
We had lots of units.
Yep.
We're talking lots of units.
Yep.
Then we moved into April, and April was a lot better. We got about 150 net move-ins. Now, it's also important to know, though, too, during the time we're talking net. Mm-hmm. That means we had a lot more move-ins, but we're also dealing with move-outs. We'd been increasing rents, everything else. We had lots of move-ins. It's not like across our portfolio we only rented 62 units.
Yeah, I think
we're talking net positive. Out of the people that moved out plus moved out, and we were positive 62.
Yeah, I think off the top of my head, if I'm remembering right, from like September of 2023 to March or April, I think we had like 2,000 move-outs or something like that across the board. A ton of move-outs.
Yeah.
You definitely, the net is really important.
Yes. So when we look at that, all of a sudden 150 doors that month net positive were rented. And that's great. We're like, okay, that was a good number. Well, that was great. We went from, whatever it was, 60 something to 150. And so right now, tracking in May where we're at. Well, right now in May, we've rented out roughly 387 is where we sit. Saturday, we rented 100 units. Net positive. This is net positive. So, we're talking about the equivalent of a large facility, right? This is adding a whole on. And so we'll probably end the month at 400 to 500. I mean, we have another Saturday. We'll hit 500.
Yeah.
Net positive rents. So yeah, that's that's a big change. A big change. We did not see numbers like this last year.
No, not even close.
Not even close. It was when you're talking about net positive gains. Well, right here alone, starting today in the last 3 months, we've that's almost 500 net positive rentals.
I mean, we were seeing net negatives
in the busy season.
Last
year.
Yeah.
Are you a new self-storage investor and want to know what that facility is worth, what the risk is, how to underwrite it? Well, that's exactly what we do in a feasibility study. A feasibility study, we actually look at the market for you. We look at the finances, the underwriting, we show you where the upside is, the downside, and all the risk. That is actually what you can provide to banks to get capital and investors. It's a big worksheet which most banks actually require. So if you want to know what a storage facility is worth that you're looking at, come to us, follow the link in the show notes, and we will tell you.
When we look at this, it's twofold here. I realize, and we've heard that not everyone is experiencing this. And so I have to really, give props to our team, everything that they've done and accomplished, because this is disproportionate. I don't think that the whole entire industry is obviously seeing these kind of results. We know they're not. We're not hearing that they are. Now, we had units to fill. We worked really hard to get to this point, the first 3 months. And that was a whole combination of different things that you guys were working on, Connor. I think one of the big things was our overall acquisition process and our close rate of new customers, and fine-tuning every aspect within that, and then really understanding where you're losing people in that process and how we increase that close rate, which was perfect timing going into the busy season, obviously, to ride that wave and really maximize it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's definitely, when we're talking operations, there's so many things, right, that are driving those buying decisions with the consumers and potential tenants that are coming in, the leads, whether they're coming to your website or they're coming online, they're coming, from a third-party referral service like Sparefoot, they're calling the facility, they're walking into the facility. There's so many different things that can go right and that can go wrong in those processes. And from the physical asset and making sure that, we have a asset that has good curb appeal, that has, clean rent-ready units, that has a good atmosphere, that has a good customer service experience, that has, a gate that works, that doesn't have a unit that's leaking, or, those different aspects. So physical asset, super important, really helps to obviously drive those occupancies. We've talked a lot about that. But that customer acquisition process is huge. And for the last 3 months, probably at this point, we have just been hammering the importance of the closing ratio percentage. So the amount of leads that are coming in at a facility and how many of those actually move in is really what we're looking at. And we're communicating those data points and expectations to the frontline troops out there that are doing the move-ins, that are making the phone calls, that are following up on leads. We're saying, hey, this is how you need to prioritize your lead follow-up, and here's exactly how to follow up on your leads, and here's this framework to use, and even providing those individuals with tools and resources to use at the facility level, where if they do, last year we did like a name your price campaign, right, to help drive occupancies. So we've provided frameworks like that to say, if you got somebody that's coming in, they want to move in, they want to price match or do this or do that, if that unit type is X% occupied, then yes, you can adjust pricing to, 5, 10%, whatever that is, up or down. And then also just providing, really just in that same breath, providing those specialists on the ground, the storage manager, specialist, whatever it is that you guys call them, or even yourselves if you're owning and operating yourself, that framework to really just be able to make the decisions and get people moved in. Also, we've been really strategic on our rate management as well. I don't want to say less aggressive, but we've been very strategic both last year and this year to really help ensure that we're not only driving the revenue, but we're also managing the occupancies as well. So going back to the 2,000 move-outs or whatever, last year we saw about a 25% churn rate with some of the rate increases and the schedules that we had, where versus this year where, right now we're nowhere near that. It was just totally unsustainable. So we dialed down the overall, average amount total of rate increases at each facility. So that's helping, maintain those occupancies, which again, obviously that's number one, right? We've got to drive the occupancy to then be able to drive rates and revenue, man. Exactly. Yep. So that's really going to be the game for us this year, is really driving the occupancies and managing revenue consistently over time. This is another thing that I keep talking to the team about that comes to mind is, this is not, and to the point we were talking earlier here, like AJ was talking about, this isn't, jumping in and gangbusters making all the money in the world in 6 months and exiting and, at a 4 cap and just killing, making all the money in the world. This is the long game. Yeah. This is literally what we do. It's going in over 3, 5, 6 years, whatever that takes, time frame wise, to truly make that asset to what it can be. And then again, if there are those instances where we have to exit, we have to exit. But all said and done, what we're doing, the strategy to not only capture those leads coming in, it's really working well. We've done a lot of just one-on-one trainings with our specialists on site. We've again provided them the tools and frameworks to utilize, and have really just made that a prime focus of everybody, and like really talking about how important that thing is. It's really truly become very important to everybody. We've actually just launched a really exciting incentive bonus structure for our frontline troops as well out there at the facility levels, to both drive team coordination in driving occupancy, not only at their facility, but their sister facilities in areas, and then also to just drive that overall closing ratio as well. So they're heavily focused on the close ratio, driving occupancies. You ask anybody on our operations team or people at the ground level, like, what is the most important thing? They're going to tell you occupancy, revenue.
That's right.
And that's exactly what we're focused on. And nothing's going to be important until you say it's important. And we've been just super, super focused on that. So I've been really excited to really just to see not only the demand, but also the team's ability to execute on that demand, because it's not like there's not a lot of competition out there. Even in our Denver market that we're in, when we're looking at our spare foot online, we literally have hundreds of competitors in our immediate market area. So it is very competitive. And again, we just talked on our most recent podcast as well, there's still that dynamic of rates having decreased, year over year, month over month, they're looking like they're increasing, which is promising. And again, that demand is showing up this busy season, but year over year, those street rates are still down. So it'll be interesting to see when those street rates get back up above, where they used to be. But they're tracking that way, which is promising.
Yeah, it's good signs. We like to see that combination of the two. And I know we've seen volume tick up. Obviously, our close rates have also ticked up. So I think that one of the things that this gets back to is a return to normal. So we had a 5-year period of time that was not normal. Most of the time in our lifespan of our company, occupancy sat at like 4%. 94%, that was never a norm, right? And we learned through that time, we understood how important it was every single customer. And we built a company around that, right? And I feel like that was something that really got lost in our industry because nobody had to. The customer acquisition, the sales process, everything, there was none. It was the opposite. It was, we're full, go away, we're raising rents. Like, they just came. You didn't need to do anything. And that is not how the industry works anymore. It's back to how it was. And a lot of people are like, oh, does that mean the industry isn't good? No, that's normal. The 94 to 96% occupancy, raising rates at 15%, that's not normal. That's not sustainable. That was abnormal. So getting back to the basics here and getting back to running operations, that is normal and that is good. So I think it's really important that we make sure we are looking at that and understanding what this means within our markets, within the industry overall. It's one of the things, if you're sitting here waiting to just go back to a 90+% without having to do a whole lot, that may never happen again. It may never happen again because, frankly, it only happened because $4 trillion were pumped into the economy.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so rare. So it's great to see the basics working and everything planning and our business model being executed at a massive scale like this, which is absolutely amazing. So I think it speaks broader terms to the industry as well when we look at the ice thawing. So like a river that's kind of jammed up, I feel like now the ice is broken up and it's flowing.
Yep.
There's still ice all over the river, chunks, everything else like that, right? But it's flowing at least. It's moving. And I think that's a good sign to see. We will see how the rest now of this year plays out and the rest of the busy season. Other things, we were talking a little earlier, and Connor, like you mentioned, if depending on going to the election, what happens with interest rates, we could see a bolster in that. Interest rates lower, housing market comes back a little. We will hopefully see more of that. And we have a lot of units to fill. The industry does.
Yeah.
I mean, I was looking at, we were looking at last week, it was Orlando.
Yep.
Orlando has, it was 10% of that entire market they have under construction that is going to come on board this year.
It's crazy.
They're adding 10% new inventory out of the gate. That doesn't count all that came up that's still not full over the last 2-3 years.
Yeah, all the vacancy that exists and that double whammy again of lackluster population growth.
Yeah, they had a negative.
To accommodate that.
Yeah, like 2%. It was way down, way down.
Yeah.
Or no, way more than that. Their growth rate was down way more than that. And so you have markets where, guys, we have units. They need to be filled. And so the facilities that came on last year and were coming on this year were coming into time where you don't have that robust movement. So then they've got to fill up, and that makes it competitive. This also drives up your expenses, your ad spend. It drives up all that kind of stuff. So these things take a little bit of time to play out, because what happens is as those things turn out and as projects aren't doing as good, by the time that you hear, like if you've ever heard anybody go, oh yeah, self-storage isn't as good as it used to be anymore. I love that. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. It's about time.
Yeah.
Because you want people to say, it's not, that all the building stops. And what happens is the pendulum swings back the other way. The problem is there's a tail to it. So all these things that are coming on this year, like in Orlando, like they mentioned, which some markets are skewed, others are not. We're using Orlando because it was it's the worst large market in the United States as far as new inventory coming on board. But when we look at that's tail end, what happened was those projects started 3 years ago. They were funded, they were built. So by the time demand changed, they couldn't stop it. It was already under construction. Then all of a sudden they're coming on board in that time. What happens though is now banks stop funding developments and then it goes the other way. Then all of a sudden you get a 3-year period where nobody builds, because there's a tail to it.
Right.
And then demand gets way more than supply. So it's a pendulum, right? Yep. That's how these things work.
Zig and zag, right?
Zig and zag, baby.
Yeah.
So when you hear that going down and people are like, oh, it's not as good anymore. I'm like, yes, that means we are going to have the pendulum's already swinging back the other way. People are not wanting to build as much. We're going to be in an undersupplied market. And so like we're looking at the comeback of some demand this year. And I think about, all right, you're in a market that's not putting out very much new supply. Projects are being canceled. Then you have next year, interest rates keep getting lower. All of a sudden, it really, that swing back can be huge. You have to remember the Great Recession basically caused the boom in real estate from 2014, 15 on, because everything was so undersupplied. You went through a 5-year period, development didn't happen. All of a sudden, everything, storage, apartments, housing, nothing had been built.
You're still making up for it.
We're still making up for it. So these times that are a little rougher, and by rougher, we're talking about normal. But the perspective of the market saying it's not 96%, this is horrible, which is interesting. But that perspective of that tone that shapes market forces, that just absolutely solidifies future demand. So I love it. That means we're going to have higher occupancy and higher rates over the next 3 years, which we said. To 2024 adjustment, 2025, things are going to be good. 26 and 7 are going to be gangbusters. Because these tails, right? But when you're in the real estate game, that's how it works. It works not only in these cycles, but it's too late when you get in after it's occurred. That's the problem.
Right.
So if you wanted to get in on the boom, you have to buy, because if it comes back in 26 and 27, the prices now reflect it. So that premium is built into it. Prices skyrocket. So in order to get the asset, right, you're already paying for that inflated stuff. You don't get the spread. Buying it when it's, though, coming back and it's like the market stabilized, which is not bad. It's like, we're not talking about distressed assets here.
Yeah.
We're talking about 85% occupancy, cash flowing assets. This is not bad.
It's hard to make it sound like how everybody else makes it sound.
Yeah, exactly. And so you're like, but if you just buy normally, right, good assets that are cash flowing, when that demand comes back, that spread is huge.
Yeah.
And your prices go up, your occupancy, your revenue goes up, then cap rates go down, and you're going, holy cow, I'm sitting on a fortune. And that's the play. So we believe that we're seeing the unthawing of the ice. It's important to know that people are like, oh yeah, well, we may have a recession, in the fall. Well, frankly, we kind of hope we do. That sounds weird, but you have a recession. That means interest rates go down. Interest rates go down. That means the housing market picks up. So for us, if we win it, if they declared a recession, which there's argument we're in a recession now, you have to remember that we knew 2007 we were in a recession in 2012. So that's when we found out that we were in a recession in 2007. So, we could very easily be currently in a recession. I believe we're in a quasi, maybe silent recession. So when that becomes really known and the problem becomes stated more, just like when inflation did, the Fed was too late to fight inflation. They were hesitant. They were months too late. They should have started raising interest rates far, far before that. If they would have done that, we wouldn't have ever gotten to a place where they had to go up so high, right? They're going to do the same going back the other way, right? They're going to wait until they have a reason to do it. Then when they do, they drop the rates and then, right, it goes back. And so I think that if we do have that softening, which is more, we now realize we're in a recession than necessarily a recession actually happens. It's just the acceptance of the market that we're in one. Then the Fed drops rates, housing market, everything picks up, and you go back. So even people that are like, oh, well, I'd love to buy, but I think we might be in a recession. That would help us in a lot of ways. It really would.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. So in a weird way, we're sitting here going, great. Recessions are unavoidable. They'll always happen. So it's not like we're hope that there will never be a recession. That's actually not good either. So I think that looking at how the year's going, the start of the year, the reaction, it was too soon for the Fed to be talking about dropping interest rates. When they started talking about that, immediately everything just went straight up. They didn't even do it. All they did was mention it.
Yeah, and then it was like, oh, they're going to drop them
boom,
3 times.
And the market just blew up, right? And so then they were like, well, can't drop interest rates now.
Yeah.
Inflation started to go back up. Since then, though, not only has it not gone up, job market's not doing good. So all of the inflationary things that we've seen, our reports over the last month have been very much, we're not seeing those things. So with that said, it looks like the Fed may be in a position in the fall where they'd start to think that, as opposed to in the spring. Now, with that said, I do have to put a disclaimer. That has only happened, I think, 3 times ever that the Fed has raised rates within 6 months of an election. So in a 6-month period of time during elections, the Fed historically doesn't do anything. They do not want to touch interest rates during election periods. So we really thought, okay, we have maybe a shot in, their last meeting, but after that passed, then it really became, I don't even know if they'll do anything. Now, they will if they have to. And that's why I think the declaration of a recession would push them in that position where we got to do something because we didn't do it in the spring. So we could be in a position going into the slow season, interest rates go, which sets us up for another gangbusters busy season, which we would obviously love. So the trends are there. We're seeing the ice move. We like all that stuff. I think it shows the power that things are thawing out. But I do have to say probably 50% of what we're seeing in our portfolio and this huge surge in move-ins and everything is due to our changes within our business model. I really do believe that. So because I know if you look at competitors in the area, they are saying we're not having a great, they're not seeing the kind of move-ins we are. So
yeah, we've had a number of operators contact us and say, hey, what are you guys seeing?
Yeah.
We're not really seeing, busy season. We're like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Like we're, I don't know what you're talking about because we're doing good.
Yeah.
So, so I think a large part of that, and that's what you guys can pull, is that you can get results that surpass market results, but it really comes down into those little things, focusing on those numbers, getting those close ratios up, being very diligent about the process, making sure you understand where the customers are leaking, like where they're going away and you're not finding them or seeing them. You all have it, every one of you. I don't care how good of an operator you see, you are losing potential tenants and you don't even know you're doing it. I promise you, because it doesn't matter how good you get, you will lose some. But for most people, 99.9% of all storage operators, they're not salespeople. They're not a sales organization. They're not good at this. So they're losing, I'd say 50% of all the potential tenants they probably even bring in. They don't even know they're doing it. They don't even know they're not capturing them in this spot. When they go to this spot, they lose them. And so we track that and really try to see how can we not increase the amount of people coming in, just increase the amount of closes. Technology is the name of the game, and how you operate your facility and the efficiency at which you can operate will depend on the technology you use. Your property management system, what it allows you to do, and what you have access will determine the outcome of how that facility performs. That's why we go with Tenant Inc. with their product Hummingbird, because they are the best in class. When dealing with automation, when dealing with move-ins, customer acquisition process, improving my online acquisition process, they are bar none the best. So if you are looking to automate your facility or operate it in a best-in-class way, make sure you guys are looking at Tenant Inc. and their product Hummingbird. The link is in the description.
Well, I tell you what, this kind of goes back to, we've talked about metrics that matter a lot of times, and really diving into the metrics that are actually really driving the success or failure of a facility or a property. And a lot of times, we'll sit in a meeting and we'll look at, rates, and we'll be like, well, we're not getting a ton of move-ins here. Maybe we need to adjust rates. Then we look at the lead close ratio and we're like, well, it's actually that 40%. So we have a healthy amount of leads coming in.
We're just not landing.
Close ratio just needs to increase.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what we've been doing over the last several months, is really just diving into metrics like that, saying, hey, this facility, that close ratio needs to be here. That close ratio is here. It needs to be there. And really figuring out why those things are, educating employees, doing staffing changes as needed, whatever it takes, and making sure that we do end up hitting those metrics that we want to hit, because, it is great to see a huge net positive number, right? It's easy to get caught up in those things too, I think, and say, oh yeah, we're winning. But when you're looking at the metrics and say, yeah, well, maybe we did have 50 move-ins at that facility, but that facility actually got like 130 leads.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So great 50 move-ins, but where's the other 100?
Bingo.
15,
Yeah.
120.
Absolutely.
That we should have captured.
That we should have captured. That we were even paying to go in.
Exactly.
We were paying ads and things to go in.
Yes. Imagine where we would be
Yeah.
if that facility hit those metrics or was hitting those close ratios. It's like, man, we think it's gangbusters now. If we were able to clean some of those things up,
Fill right up.
Yep, exactly.
And really,
it's a huge difference.
Those metrics are like things that we look at. Like, that's what I want to be the best at.
Mm-hmm.
So in that market, if we're the best at that, you will always be full. So you don't need to get 3 times as many people.
Mm-hmm.
You just get with what you have, you increase your close rate and you'll be full.
Yep.
And so if we are a leader in that market at closing those potential tenants, we will be full and we'll be able to raise prices and we'll be able to dictate things. So those are metrics and things that you look at that are controllables that can really help you win despite maybe other things that are going on in the market. This is especially important when you have a limited amount of demand. And we saw this. We had some units, that you're talking, we may have had in a month 100 potential investors 2 years ago, tenants 2 years ago at one facility, and then all of a sudden this year we had 15.
Mm-hmm.
Same month looking over. So then if you were closing 10% of them at 100 and you got 10 in, well, 10% at 15, you're renting 2 units.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're not even net positive at that point. You're not keeping up with your move outs. So, and yet if you closed 100% of them, you would have done more than when you had 100.
Mm-hmm.
You would have gotten 15 in, which was more than your 10% close rate. That's the point. That's the idea. That's what we're looking at, is if you increase that close rate, you can do so much more on so much less.
Yeah.
And that's how you win even when demand's down.
For sure. And like you said, the customer acquisition costs are up. A lot of costs are up across the board. You can't afford to be losing those tenants, those leads coming in.
Too expensive.
They truly are. And fixing these things, it's the simplest little things that really change that close ratio. It's simply calling somebody before their reservation, later that day and saying, hey, I'm so-and-so at, store local storage, Denver, whatever it is. Looking forward to seeing you later today. Looks like I got you in unit XYZ. My name is so-and-so. I'll see you here at 4 p.m. and I'll be waiting for you. Like, super simple and easy. Yep. Just those little things like that, making sure that you're improving the show rate of people that are, making those reservations or appointments to show up, and just literally answering the phone when it rings.
Simple things.
I mean, those are what's really going to just immediately drive that close ratio. And it's an amazing problem to have.
Yeah. and by the way, I mean this. If you have a manager on your site, your manager isn't a property manager. They are a salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not, and if they think they're not a salesperson, they don't want to be a salesperson, get a new manager.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you have them there.
Yeah.
They're there to move people in. So if you are directing people and paying for people to go to your facility and your manager is not having operation hours open, they're always out on site, they're cleaning up trash, everything else, and you have low occupancy, you need a new manager. That manager needs to understand that their job is sales.
Mm-hmm.
They are there to move people in. And we see this. We saw this. We had to do a big cleanup and go through it. It's like, you obviously don't understand. If you don't want to be doing this, you need to go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Because this is the job. We're paying, we're getting people in. You need to be selling them and closing them and getting them in, or else we're all wasting money. We're wasting opportunity. And it's an eroding effect over time that you're like, how did we end up here at low rates and low occupancy?
Mm-hmm.
It can be a death knell.
It really can. And the other side of that coin too is, when you're the hiring and retention portion of that, there's so much to be said about focusing in on those skill sets. If you need a maintenance person, hire a maintenance person. You need a salesperson, somebody getting people moving in, hire a salesperson. Hire somebody that's used to doing the administrative stuff. It's very, very difficult to find any kind of unicorns out there that can do either one of those things super well, in addition to dealing with all the crazy, just random stuff you deal with at a storage facility in general.
Exactly.
So super focused on also improving that within our company as well. Really just focusing in on those roles, responsibilities, and making sure we're also looking at that other cost of retention and training, all of those different aspects, which is huge. Right now we spend about it's just over like $5,000 on every single new hire to get them brought on, to find them, train them, bring them on.
It's
and
expensive.
insanely expensive. So all good things to be aware of. But I'm really excited, AJ, to see where things are at, where we're going. Things are looking promising. But again, it's like we can't, just because we're seeing that heavy demand, we can't just be asleep at the wheel.
Well,
you know?
and two, we saw this last year. Busy season started, then it died.
Yeah.
And so it changed rapidly. Early on, we had like 1 month, they're like, oh, it's going to be good. And then the next 2 seasons just plateaued, went away. So it can change, and it does change fast. And that's why the focus on the controllables. So
100%.
All right, everybody.
Love it, man.
Get after it.
We'll see you guys. Thanks.